We can already learn the identity of the prototype, who he is, and what he is actually trying to achieve. Is the doll Poppy his daughter, and why did he save Huggy Wuggy? We'll start with the backstory of the prototype. To understand his story, we first need to learn about Elliot Ludwig, the creator of Playtime Company. There's a theory circulating online that Elliot Ludwig is, in fact, the prototype. So far, this theory has not been confirmed by any solid evidence, but there are some arguments supporting the idea that the prototype is Elliot Ludwig. Let's begin from the beginning. Poppy confessed in a tape that she is Elliot Ludwig's daughter, at least she considers herself to be so, as parts of his daughter were needed to create this experiment. She speaks poorly of her father, though his name is never mentioned, but we all understand who ran this place. The obsession of Poppy with the prototype could be explained by the fact that he is her father, or the deceased daughter of Elliot Ludwig and the deceased Elliot Ludwig himself might think they are alive, but only in the bodies of monsters. It would certainly be interesting if the prototype admitted to Poppy that he is her father, but that would be a bit too dramatic. Also, it might give off a slight sense of plagiarism, but there are already some indirect signs pointing toward it. Yes, Elliot Ludwig is dead, and this fact alone provides another argument in favor of this theory, because he passed away before the major initiative involving the toys took off. Dr. Harley Sawyer proposed this idea to the company in 1990, which was around the same time that Elliot Ludwig tragically passed away. It is entirely possible that the doctor may have suggested utilizing the already deceased body of the former company leader for their project, and from there, we can move on to the next logical sequence of events that could indirectly support the theory that Elliot Ludwig's identity is connected to the prototype. The possible relationship between the Doctor and Elliot Ludwig could help explain why the prototype chose not to kill the Doctor right from the very beginning. It is highly likely that this decision was based on the fact that the Doctor was already involved in an experiment of some sort, but that fact did not pose any interference with the prototype, unlike with other monsters the prototype might have encountered. However, the most compelling reason the prototype might have spared the Doctor could be due to the fact that they were already familiar with each other. This connection may not have been just one of scientist and experiment subject. Rather, they were two full-fledged individuals with some kind of shared history or understanding that made the prototype more willing to trust the Doctor. At some point, Elliot Ludwig decided to launch a program in his company for young scientists. It was called Young Geniuses. It's unclear exactly when it took place, but it's certain that a young Harley Sawyer participated in this program. In this program, the young geniuses had to showcase their intelligence and abilities, and naturally, Harley Sawyer fully demonstrated his talents, which Elliot Ludwig appreciated. However, there's a document about Harley Sawyer's expulsion from the Young Geniuses program, in which the leader of Playtime Company describes Harley Sawyer's abilities, saying that he is extremely intelligent and advanced for his age, but too arrogant, impulsive, cruel, and completely unwilling to work on these issues, which are crucial traits for a scientist. This resentment could have played a major role in Harley Sawyer's future. Even as a youngster, Harley showed great potential as a genius, but at the same time he was bloodthirsty and ready to do anything to achieve his goals. In fact, we've already seen this. Later on, Elliot and Harley never crossed paths, but in 1990, when Elliot Ludwig was essentially already dead, he was remembered by late Peer, the new head of the company who brought him in as a neurosurgeon. Eventually, the Doctor became the head of special projects, and then, as you already know, he proposed the Body Initiative, took it on himself, and the company began to build a large underground laboratory. That's when the terrifying experiments started. Dr. Harley Sawyer found the key to immortality in his success and activities. He wanted to conduct more and more experiments, for which he was kindly provided with the orphanage. There's still no information on how he created the prototype. If we take into account the theory that the prototype is indeed Elliot Ludwig, and the human bones in his hands belong to him as parts of his body, we can understand why there's such a special relationship between them. On the other hand, the Doctor wanted to take revenge and prove to Elliot that he was the brilliant scientist he claimed to be. On the other hand, he was truly interested in conducting these experiments, as he mentions in one of the tapes. He really was interested in studying him. Perhaps the prototype was a unique experiment for the Doctor that he showed to almost no one. Maybe none of the Playtime leaders even knew that the Doctor was using parts of Elliot Ludwig's body. But the Doctor is also an experiment, and thus began the hour of joy, the uprising of the toys. And judging by the Doctor's words, he didn't know what the prototype was preparing, and in a somewhat ironic way, he praises him for his actions. Yet the uprising doesn't surprise him. At the very least, this could point to the possibility that the Doctor and the prototype, both being part of the same kind of experiments, could have communicated with each other. It's highly probable that they spent a significant amount of time discussing their future cooperation, which they continued to engage in for a decade after the Hour of Joy. However, there's a nagging feeling that the Doctor might not have been fully content with staying in that situation. So it's likely that, over time, he began preparing for a drastic move, possibly with plans to eventually kill the prototype. For a long stretch of time, there had been a drawn-out experiment involving the prototype, one that led to a growing sense of urgency. The prototype became increasingly anxious and desperate as time was slipping away, and there was a clear sense of something critical approaching. But let me remind you, 10 years had already passed, and the prototype was left with absolutely no time left to waste. In this context, we can see how crucial and pressing the situation was for the prototype. The Doctor, on the other hand, likely understood this as well. He had probably been deceiving the prototype for a long period, successfully maintaining the ruse while continuing to work closely with it. But as the years went by, the Doctor's patience began to erode, and he became aware that the prototype could sense the growing tension. Eventually, the Doctor understood that his time to act was approaching, and this realization was likely starting to impact his decisions. Therefore, I suppose the Doctor was preparing some kind of conspiracy against the prototype. That's why he could have been treating the monsters, or maybe even bringing them back to life. Huggy Wuggy at the end of the 4th chapter. We didn't meet just by chance. In the trailer with the Doctor, it's shown that the Doctor was apparently treating him, and he patched him up, not the prototype, as was originally assumed. After all, the prototype takes bodies for himself. We didn't see how he takes some of the monsters, and I wouldn't be surprised if Miss Delight or someone else survives, because we never saw how the prototype took their bodies and made them a part of himself. Why would the Doctor have treated them? I think it's to set up a second Hour of Joy for the prototype, or at least to give the prototype more work by distracting him with the surviving monsters. But sooner or later, the prototype would have noticed this pattern and would have killed the Doctor. However, perhaps the Doctor gave orders to his monsters to stay quiet for the time being. But as we know, the Doctor died, and now the other monsters have no reason to stay quiet. So, what does the prototype want? I assume that he would still want to create his ideal body, the one that would allow him to live for a very long time. He could be worried that his ability to sustain life is running out. The monsters in Playtime Company could also die because there's nothing for them to eat, and they experience hunger. The prototype could also have been experiencing hunger, and to avoid feeling it, to continue living and moving, he conducts his own experiment with which he could recreate himself as a super being who doesn't need to drink or eat and would live forever. But if the prototype's plan is to become human, then why would he try to blow us up at the end of the 4th chapter? If he hadn't tried to blow us up, that would have been suspicious. Well, for now, nothing is known for sure about his plan.